You've heard it before. Action film is getting worse. The editing's terrible, there's too much CGI, there is a problem with action movies today. Except, there isn't. Not only is today's action comparable to that of the past, I'd say it's even better. Never has action been more colorful, experimental, and creative than the past decade. But before I get ahead of myself, let's go back in time and see how we got here. In the 80s, what many consider to be the best decade for action in film, the thrill was found in the ridiculousness of one-man army heroes like John McClane, Ripley, and Rambo achieve the impossible against all odds in the most over-the-top way imaginable, and not so much in the style that the action was filmed. As long as we could see the physical embodiments of peak masculinity shoot up empty jungles and throw out one-liners, we were happy.
Stick around.
In the 90s, one-man army protagonists were swapped out for darker tones and crime-driven plots. But again, the style of how the action was filmed didn't really matter. That was until the Wachowskis went ahead and revolutionized the way that action in American cinema was handled. Not only could the audience see the action, but they could feel the movement and intensity of it like never before, thanks to creative uses of CGI and immersive camera work. Stylized action was the way of the future, but unfortunately, not the near future. The Matrix introduced everyone to the possibilities of stylized action, and almost nobody in the 2000s knew what to do. Few either stuck with what worked or made their own action styles. Most, however, just copied and pasted the styles of those who did, thus creating the trends that rightfully deserve the criticisms mentioned at the start of this video. There was no doubt that action had gotten worse. Movies in the 2010s finally started to properly stylize action in creative and fresh ways. Action went from dark to colorful, shaky to smooth, over-edited to masterfully paced, generic to holy shit, is that Jason Momoa riding Godzilla into a battle under the sea between crabmen and space rangers? There is no doubt in my mind that the 2010s has been the best decade for action so far. Yes, there are exceptions, but that's the case with every decade. The 80s had tons of bad action movies that nobody remembers. One of my favorites being Bulletproof, a film where Gary Busey calls people butthorn and has a scene where he reminisces about the time he seduced a woman on the beach by playing a saxophone.
Bird season's over, butthorn.
Every decade has bad action, some more than others, and while the 2010s had its fair share, it's greatly overshadowed by the amount of stellar action sequences we got this past decade, and I just want to share why I think that. Now before I go any further, I want to quickly clarify that not all the examples I'm going to use are good movies. I'm simply talking about the action in those movies, not the writing.
It's my birthday. Now it's time for me to light my candles.
Also, just remember that this is my personal opinion. If you don't agree that the LEGO movies have better action sequences than Bayformers, then go and play with your Creo Transformers set. As for me and my house, we will praise the action in animated movies. But first, let's talk about camera work. Prior to The Matrix, the camera work in action scenes for the most part was really basic. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Most of my favorite action scenes keep it simple, and that's the beauty of it. But it does have its limitations. You as the audience are sort of restricted to just being an outside observer because of the static nature of the camera work, with the only sense of movement coming from the editing and the actions of the characters, which is fine. But what if the camera work were to smoothly match the movement and flow of the action and create a sort of dance between cameraman and stuntman? You get what I like to call boogie fight filmmaking. Boogie fight filmmaking, or BFF for short, takes the camera off the tripod and follows the choreography with elegance and style, making for immersive and intense fight scenes that makes you feel like you're a part of it. This means the cameraman has marks to hit on time just as the stuntmen do, which results in a spectacular fight scene that resembles a dance. There are of course varying intensities and styles of BFF, just as there are in dancing. For example, I would compare the camera work in the John Wick films to ballet. Its classy minimal camera movements follow what's in his field of view, like the various guns he reloads, the assassins he shoots, hits, and horses. The Raid movies take it up a notch with riveting and stylistic camera work that embodies the spirit of swing dancing, just twirling you around into the rhythm of the scene. Or how about the style in Kingsmen, which is just so bonkers I couldn't even think of a dance to match it. Now, I'm not saying that every action scene needs to be filmed in the boogie fight filmmaking way. I'm just saying that when it comes to fight scenes, the BFF action style is my BFF, and there are a surprising amount of movies from the 2010s that incorporate it. But if it's too groovy for you, I get it. Not everyone grew up watching Take the Lead and Step Up 1 through 3 with their older sister. Luckily for you, the 2010s was very generous with its action styles. You want something more traditional? Here's 3 Mission Impossible movies, which are probably the best in the franchise. While we're at it, let's throw in Skyfall, Inception, and Fury Road. You like war movies? Nicolas Cage chainsaw dueling a satanic cultist?
Yes, let's do it.
Giant things punching other giant things? Action scenes timed to the beat of the soundtrack? A good Transformers movie for once where they finally incorporate the fact that they could transform into the fight scenes?
Okay, it's happening! Oh my god! You got the time!
You like superhero movies? When handled correctly, the action in superhero movies can drip with deliciousness, with moments like this spinning slow-mo shot in Avengers Age of Ultron, the entire Arrow scene in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, or literally every action sequence from Aquaman. Say what you will about the script, the dialogue, or anything else for that matter, its visuals were some of the most striking and memorable things to come out of the entire decade's worth of superhero movies. It also has laughably bad moments, which for me makes it even better.
We already have an Atlantean living among us and his name is Aquaman.
Now obviously not every superhero movie had great action sequences. Some had forgettable action, some had horrible action, some had all 3 in the same movie. But why? Why does the Thanos fight on Titan look so pristine, smooth, and immersive, while the battle on Wakanda looks so messy and disorienting? CGI. You have heard that it was said, CGI is ruining the movies, but today I say to you,
How about new?
in real life, a camera is restricted to the laws of physics. Sure, you could certainly move it around in interesting and creative ways, but at the end of the day, the camera is limited. But what if it wasn't? In a CGI environment, the camera is free to move however the filmmakers wish it to, meaning that if they wanted a physically impossible shot like this one where the camera flips around and tracks the character all in one buttery smooth take, they can do exactly that. With CGI, your imagination is the limit. That or the studio's time and budget constraints, but for the most part, it's your imagination, which is why I in many cases prefer CGI action sequences over ones in live action. One is prone to being shaky and over-edited, and the other is not. This is also why I really enjoy animated films. They have surprisingly great action sequences that involve a lot of creativity and ridiculousness that you wouldn't see otherwise. It's almost as if animators not only know what looks aesthetically pleasing, but also meticulously plan their action sequences down to each individual shot and only cut when absolutely necessary. When even the action in animated movies is this good, how can we say that action in film has gotten worse? Even if computer-generated anthropomorphic characters and superheroes alike fighting each other isn't your thing, there were so many other movies with varying action styles of great quality that prove that statement wrong. While the 80s introduced us to plenty of iconic badasses, the 2010s flooded us with style, experimentation, and innovation, which for me makes it the best decade for action in film so far. Also, Aquaman was one of the best superhero movies of the decade. I mean, you got super soakers, jellyfish dresses, a terrible cover of Africa by Pitbull, an octopus with bioluminescent tattoos playing the bongos, Aquaman diving into oceans full of monsters, going treasure hunting, and saying he's missing happy hour for saving human lives like the Axe body spray badass he is. It looks incredible? Are those dinosaurs?